If Carlos Solis's mother, Juanita Solis, survived, if she lived, if she did not die, then what would happen? So let's say Juanita still gets hit by the car that Andrew Van de Kamp was driving. So Andrew Van de Kamp is still a horrible hit and run driver, and Bree and Rex still cover up Andrew's crime. Now Juanita wakes up in the hospital, and this time the nurses are not negligent and they stop her from falling down the stairs. And from here, Juanita would still have to stay in the hospital for some medical evaluation, but she would try to speak to Carlos, and she would be able to get in touch with Carlos, her son, and she would tell Carlos that Gabby was having an affair with John Rowland, and Carlos would know the truth. And from here, Carlos would divorce Gabby, and Carlos would still go to prison for his financial crimes and for the bad stuff that he did. So that would not change much. Now, Carlos and Gabby would probably divorce. Carlos would definitely divorce Gabby in this case. And Juanita would also probably tell him that she got run over after she caught Gabby and John having one of their affairs. So Carlos would be even more angry, and he might even blame Gabby and John for Juanita getting run over. So yes, Carlos and Gabby would divorce, and I doubt they would ever get back together in this case, especially with Juanita still alive. Now, after Carlos gets out of prison and goes on parole, maybe Juanita would stay with him for a while, and maybe she would help him out, and they would work things out together. And I think either Carlos ends up getting maybe remarried to someone else who's a lot nicer and better than Gabby, or maybe he stays single but has a much happier life. Because this is before Gabby had her big character development. I think Gabby Solis is one of the best written characters and has the greatest character development besides Bree. So, but at this point in the timeline, she is still not the character that she ends up becoming. So, in this case, if Carlos left her forever in this case, then he would be a lot happier. Of course, the later version of Gabby makes Carlos happy, and she is a very great character. But yes, of course, in Gabby's pregnancy, which might have been John's baby, Juanita would probably find out the truth as to whether Gabby's child was John's child or Carlos's child. She might run a paternity test, and if it's John's child, then yeah, that would put Gabby in a lot of trouble. So, if Juanita survived, of course, and if Juanita survived, then well, as I mentioned, with Juanita surviving, then Carlos would probably end ties with Gabby and sever them, so he wouldn't really be around to kill Gabby's stepfather, and that murder cover would not happen. And Carlos would never get mad at, or actually, no, Carlos would still get mad at Andrew Van de Kamp and Bree. And I'm sure that when Andrew has his little metamorphosis, his second one in season 6 and 7, he would probably come clean and admit what he did to Carlos and Juanita. And even though Carlos and Juanita would be furious with Andrew, they would probably figure out a way to forgive him, even though they shouldn't, but they probably would, knowing what Carlos is like. So and I doubt Carlos would hold such a strong grudge against Bree in this case because Juanita survived and she did not die. Now, Juanita might encourage Carlos to forgive Andrew and Bree because Juanita might rationalize it as a mother protecting her son, Bree covering up for Andrew, and Juanita might say, Carlos, uh, and then Juanita might even admit some truth to Carlos because Juanita claims to Gabby in the actual show that she killed Carlos's dad. Juanita claims that she killed Carlos's dad because Carlos's dad was being very abusive to Carlos. So Juanita might admit that truth to Carlos, and then Carlos would have to process the truth of that because Carlos has been thinking this whole time, his entire life, that his father just left them and just left the house. He didn't know that his father was dead. So yes, I mean, there would be a lot of healing and a lot of talking and a lot of processing things if Juanita survived. So it would have been very interesting to see.